The trade station hung in orbit above a dying blue moon, a place where hundreds of species came to bargain, eat, and pretend the galaxy wasn't falling apart. But that morning, the corridors were quieter than usual. Something about the humans had changed things. They always did. On Dock 47, a small boy named Eli wandered beside his father, a cargo engineer for the Terran fleet. He was no soldier, no hero, just a curious kid with a stuffed toy starship clutched in his hand. Its paint was faded, its wings chipped, but to Eli, it was a friend. They were there for a simple parts exchange, yet the air was heavy. Alien traders glanced away as they passed. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. And then, near the loading bay, Eli saw her. A small alien girl sat alone against a wall, her silver-gray skin bruised with dust. Two larger beings, guards maybe, stood a few steps away, watching her like she was a burden. Her eyes glowed faint blue, like the last spark of a dying ember. She looked no older than Eli. He slowed down, tugging his father's sleeve. "Dad, why is she crying?" His father didn't answer, just muttered, "Keep walking, son." But Eli couldn't. He stared back. The girl's hands were empty, trembling. Around her feet lay broken fragments of something once precious, maybe a charm, maybe a memory. He didn't know. He just knew she looked lost. The boy hesitated, then turned his toy over in his palm. He'd had it since before they left Earth. He loved it. But right now, it felt small in his hand, and somehow, not small enough to keep. Without another thought, Eli walked toward her. The guard stepped forward instantly, towering shadows ready to block his way. But he didn't flinch. He looked up at them, eyes clear and honest, the way only a child's could be. "I just want to give her this," he said. For a moment, nobody moved. The silence stretched across the dock, thick as vacuum. Then one guard tilted his head, curious. He looked at the other, who gave a slow nod. Eli knelt and placed the little toy starship in the alien girl's hands. She didn't speak, didn't even blink, just stared at the object, this fragile, human-made thing, as if it were something she had only seen in dreams. Her fingers traced the cracked wings. And then, faintly, she smiled. It wasn't much. But in that station full of fear and noise, it was everything. Eli's father called for him sharply, breaking the moment. The boy turned, gave a small wave, and walked back. The girl kept watching until he disappeared down the corridor. That night, reports spread through the lower decks. Some said the child was no orphan. Others whispered she was the daughter of a Varnian warlord, one whose name made fleets tremble. No one believed it at first. Just gossip. Just noise. But then, as the station lights dimmed and the moon dipped into shadow, something stirred outside orbit. The long-range sensor screamed. Hundreds of Varnian warships had just exited hyperspace. All of them armed. All of them silent. Every species panicked. They thought war was coming. That humanity had finally crossed a line it couldn't return from. And yet, when the Varnian flagship's comms opened, a voice thundered through the void. "Bring me the human child, the one who offered a gift to my daughter." The station froze. And somewhere in the quiet of Dock 47, a little toy starship still glowed faintly in alien hands. No one slept that night. The stars outside the viewport were alive with movement. Hundreds of warships gliding in perfect formation. Each one bore the insignia of the Varnian Empire, a name whispered across the galaxy with fear and respect. Dock 47 shook under their gravity pulses. Shields flickered. Lights dimmed. Every alarm screamed the same message. Unknown fleet, weapons charged. Inside the command tower, panic spread faster than sound. Traders sealed their cargo bays. Civilians hid in maintenance tunnels. Even the security officers, veterans from 5 different worlds, looked pale. 500 ships, someone whispered. They're here for war. Captain Merrick of the Terran fleet tried to keep his voice calm as he barked orders. Evacuate non-essential personnel. Power up defensive grids. Give me a line to their flagship, now. But no one answered his hail. The Varnians said nothing. Their ships just hovered, silent and still, like a wall of judgment blocking the stars. On the lower deck, Eli clung to his father's hand, feeling the vibrations through the metal floor. He didn't understand much, but he knew fear when he saw it. His father's eyes were fixed on the viewport, wide and worried. "Dad, did I do something wrong?" The man hesitated. His throat tightened. He wanted to say no, that everything was fine. But the sight outside, that impossible armada, made the word die on his lips. Up in orbit, one ship moved forward. It was massive, kilometers long, black as night, with glowing red engines that pulsed like a heartbeat. And then, for the first time, the Varnians spoke. A single transmission cut through every frequency, translated into every language. "Bring us the human child," the message repeated. Once, twice, then silence again. The Terran commander swallowed hard. A child? They're asking for a child. Across the hall, diplomats argued. Some said it was a trap. Others insisted it was ritual. One alien trader whispered, "They must think the boy insulted them." Fear turned to confusion. Confusion turned to anger. Everyone wanted someone to blame. In the middle of that chaos, a lone officer approached Eli and his father. Her uniform was wrinkled, her eyes tired but kind. "You're the engineer from Bay 7, right? The boy who gave something to the Varnian girl." The father nodded slowly. "They're not asking for you," she said, voice trembling. "They're asking for him." Eli blinked. "Me?" "Yes," she whispered. "The Emperor himself sent the command." The father pulled his son close, shaking his head. "No, he's just a kid. They're not taking him anywhere." But it was too late for choices. The Varnian flagship sent down a landing craft. It cut through the station's defenses like they weren't even there, settling silently on the dock. When the hatch opened, the station guards raised their rifles, but froze. The beings that stepped out were not soldiers of destruction. They were warriors in ceremonial armor, silver, marked with blue runes, each carrying a banner instead of a weapon. 500 of them. They moved in perfect unity, kneeling as one. The sound echoed through the hangar, a thunderous wave of armor meeting metal. And then, their leader, a towering figure with obsidian skin and glowing eyes, stepped forward and said in a deep voice that carried across every corridor, "The child who gave light to our princess will be honored by the House of Varn. Bring him forth." Everyone stared. No one breathed. Eli's small hand squeezed his father's tighter. He whispered, "Dad, they're not angry, they're sad." And at that moment, for the first time since the fleet arrived, Captain Merrick saw it too, the sorrow behind the warrior's eyes. Not hatred, not revenge, something else, something older. The silence of the dock returned, but now, it was different. It wasn't fear anymore. It was awe. The air in Dock 47 was thick with silence. 500 armored warriors stood motionless, their banners glowing faintly in the station lights. Every eye, every sensor, every camera pointed at one small boy standing beside his trembling father. Eli didn't understand what honor meant to a galactic empire. He only understood that everyone was staring at him, some with fear, some with hope, most with disbelief. Captain Merrick stepped forward, jaw clenched. "We can't hand over a child to an unknown empire," he said firmly. "They'll have to speak to me first." The Varnian leader tilted his head. His voice rolled through the air like distant thunder. "Human captain, your courage is noted. But this is not a demand. It is a request, from a father to another." That single sentence changed the temperature in the room. Even the translator hesitated, as if unsure it had heard right. Merrick frowned. "A father?" The alien nodded slowly. "Our emperor. He has not spoken to any off-world species in centuries. His daughter was lost to an accident on the mining world of Kale, 9. We believed no one could reach her in time. Yet she was found by your kind, and she returned holding a human creation, a toy starship." He extended one clawed hand. In his palm rested an image sphere. It flickered to life, projecting a shimmering hologram into the air. Eli gasped. It was her, the little alien girl from the dock. She was smiling now, clutching his small, broken toy. Around her were Varnian medics and guards, their expressions softer than the stone-faced soldiers outside. "She told us," the leader said quietly, "that a human child shared his light with her when all she had was darkness. And when our sensors found no trace of hostility, no deception, the Emperor wept." Eli's father stood frozen. No one had ever heard of a Varnian emperor shedding tears. The Varnians were said to be cold, bound by law and blood. Yet here they were, crossing the stars not for vengeance, but gratitude. "Your people call it kindness," the alien continued. "Ours call it the bond of hearts. It has not been spoken in generations." Eli looked up at his father. "Dad, they're not here to hurt anyone." The man swallowed hard, fighting the fear still in his gut. I know, son. I know. Captain Merrick turned to the alien leader. What does the Emperor want with the boy? To thank him, came the answer, calm and solemn. And to offer something in return. Merrick hesitated. His instincts screamed caution, but the sincerity in the alien's voice was undeniable. He finally nodded. Then I'll go with him. The Varnian warrior bowed his head slightly. That is acceptable. The hangar trembled as a transport shuttle descended from the flagship, its engines humming softly like a song. The warriors parted in perfect symmetry, leaving a clear path toward it. Eli's father knelt, his hands gripping his son's shoulders. Stay close to me, all right? Don't talk unless they talk first. Eli nodded, clutching his jacket. But his gaze was on the shuttle, not with fear, but with wonder. They stepped inside. The doors hissed shut. Through the viewport, the station grew smaller until it was just another dot among the stars. The shuttle soared toward the massive flagship that filled half the sky, a fortress of black metal and blue light. As they approached, the hull markings glowed. Hundreds of alien eyes followed them, and for a moment, Eli felt tiny. Yet when he looked down, he saw something that made him smile, a carving on the shuttle's control panel. It was the same shape as his toy starship. Someone had etched it there, long ago, perhaps by another child, or maybe by a warrior who remembered being one. The shuttle docked. As the doors opened, a corridor of light greeted them, and at the far end, a voice echoed, deep and powerful. Bring the human child forward. Eli's father stepped in front of him, heart pounding. But the boy touched his arm gently. Dad, it's okay, he whispered. He just wants to say thank you. The father hesitated, and for the first time, followed his son's courage instead of his fear. Together, they walked toward destiny. The corridor felt endless. Walls of dark alloy pulsed with faint blue veins of energy, like the ship itself was alive and watching. Every step echoed, soft, careful, human. Eli clutched his father's sleeve, staring at the glowing symbols that danced across the walls. They weren't words he knew, yet somehow they felt calm, almost protective. At the end of the passage, two enormous doors waited, each one carved with spirals that seemed to move when you blinked. Before them stood a pair of Varnian honor guards, still as statues, their armor polished like liquid glass. When Eli and his father stopped, the guards raised their staffs and struck the floor once. The doors opened. Light flooded the hall. It wasn't harsh. It was warm, almost golden, as if sunlight had found its way into deep space. Inside sat the Emperor. He was nothing like the monsters the stories described. His body was immense. Yes, his armor ancient and heavy, but his eyes were alive, deep pools of blue fire that burned with grief and wisdom. Beside him stood the little alien girl, the same one Eli had met on the station. She wasn't crying anymore. When she saw him, she ran forward, breaking every rule of ceremony, and hugged him tightly. The hall gasped, warriors tensing at the breach of protocol. But the Emperor only smiled, raising one great hand in peace. Let her, he said softly. His voice carried like thunder muffled by distance. Eli grinned, returning her embrace. His toy starship was still clutched in her small hands, repaired now, its wings gleaming with Varnian crystal. The Emperor leaned forward. So this is the human child who shared light with my daughter, he said, his gaze shifting to Eli's father. And you are his guardian. Eli's father bowed slightly, unsure of the right gesture. I'm just a mechanic, Your Excellency. We didn't mean to cause. The Emperor lifted a hand. You caused peace. The hall fell silent again. Even the hum of the engines seemed to fade. For generations, the Emperor continued, our empire taught us to trust no one beyond our stars. We built walls of fear and fire. Yet your child crossed them with nothing but a broken toy. He stood, the motion slow and heavy with meaning. That is a strength we lost long ago. Eli tilted his head. It wasn't strength, he said honestly. She just looked sad. The Emperor's great shoulders trembled. A sound left his throat, half laugh, half sob. And that, little one, is what makes your kind dangerous. You see pain and answer with compassion. You turn enemies into family. He descended the steps and knelt before the human boy, an emperor kneeling before a child. Gasps rippled through the room. No Varnian ruler had ever bowed to another being. He opened his hand. Inside lay a small metal insignia, shaped like two intersecting stars. This is the crest of honor, he said. Worn only by warriors who have saved our bloodline. From this day, you are Eli of Terra, friend of Varn. Eli blinked, unsure whether to bow or smile. He did both. The girl beamed beside him, holding up the fixed toy. Now your ship can fly again, she said. Eli laughed. Now yours can too. The Emperor rose, his voice echoing across the chamber. Let it be known across the stars, the humans are no longer strangers. They are kindred. The hall erupted in the rhythmic pounding of armor. The sound rolled like thunder across metal floors. Warriors who had arrived ready for vengeance now saluted a child. Eli's father felt his throat tighten. He had spent years fixing machines, not moments like this. He didn't know how history began, but somehow, his son had just rewritten it. The Emperor turned to him. You feared we came for war, he said gently. But tell your people, we came for thanks. Eli looked up at the towering figure and whispered, will you visit Earth someday? The Emperor smiled faintly. Perhaps, but for now, the stars will carry your kindness further than any fleet. The light dimmed, and the great doors closed behind them. Outside, the endless armada began to move, not in battle formation, but in salute. 500 ships tilted their wings toward the tiny human transport preparing to return home. And for the first time in centuries, the Varnian Empire bowed to a planet they once feared. The shuttle drifted silently away from the Varnian flagship, its thrusters whispering against the void. Through the small viewport, Eli watched as 500 warships turned, their formation shifting like a school of glowing giants. But instead of battle patterns, they moved in salute, a gesture never before seen in galactic history. Beside him, his father sat in stunned silence. His hands were still trembling, but his heart felt lighter. He had seen war before. He had seen what fear could do to worlds. But this was something else entirely. Dad, Eli whispered, pressing his nose to the glass. They're waving goodbye. His father smiled faintly. Yes, son, I think they are. Behind them, a Varnian envoy remained aboard as escort, a tall female officer named Serac. Her voice was calm, her eyes reflecting the same quiet respect that now seemed to follow every human breath. The Emperor has sent his promise, she said. No Varnian fleet shall ever raise arms against terror again. Your child's act has bound that oath. Eli's father shook his head slowly. All that just because he gave her a toy? Serac's gaze softened. To you, it was a toy. To us, it was proof that innocence still exists among the stars. The shuttle descended through the cold clouds surrounding the trade station. Thousands were gathered at the docks. Humans, aliens, traders, even smugglers who had stopped pretending they didn't care. When the landing ramp lowered, the noise was deafening. Cheers. Applause. The sound of 1,000 hands and claws striking metal in rhythm. No one had expected the Terrans to survive that meeting. Some believed they'd never see the boy again. Eli blinked in the light, gripping his father's hand as they stepped out. He didn't understand the words being shouted, but he felt the warmth behind them. Captain Merrick pushed through the crowd, eyes wide. You're alive. He knelt beside Eli. What did they say, kid? What did they want? Eli smiled. They said thank you. The crowd went silent for a heartbeat. Then laughter spread like light. Someone shouted, humanity did it again, and the station erupted in celebration. For the first time in years, every flag, Terran, Varnian, Crix, and dozens more, hung side by side. The dock that once carried fear now carried hope. But not everyone cheered. High above, on the observation deck, the Terran Council watched in quiet disbelief. The counselors had prepared for war, not peace. Files marked DEFCON alerts still glowed red across their consoles. Are we sure it's real? One asked. An entire empire kneeling because of a child? The senior diplomat exhaled slowly. You don't understand Varnians. They are creatures of pride. For their emperor to bow means something deeper than politics. He leaned forward. It means the galaxy just changed. And humanity didn't need weapons to do it. Back on Dock 47, Eli's father lifted him onto his shoulders. Cameras flashed. News drones hovered overhead, streaming every moment across star systems. Somewhere on Earth, millions watched, speechless. The little alien girl appeared beside them, stepping down from her own escort craft. She ran up to Eli, holding something in her hands, a crystal sphere that pulsed with faint blue light. My father said this belongs to you, she said shyly. Eli turned it over. Inside the glass was a tiny hologram of two ships, one human, one Varnian, flying side by side. Beneath them was an inscription written in both languages. Light shared is never lost. He smiled, then looked up at her. You kept my toy, he said softly. She nodded. And you gave me peace. The cameras caught that moment, the handshake between two children from two different worlds. Within hours, it spread faster than any transmission in history. Every colony, every trading world, every military outpost replayed it on loop. Some laughed, some cried. Many didn't understand. But deep down, even the hardest soldiers knew what it meant. Humanity had done it again. Not through power, not through conquest, but through heart. That night, as the station lights dimmed, Eli sat beside the viewport again. His toy starship rested beside him, repaired and shining. Outside, the stars looked closer than ever. He turned to his father. Do you think they'll really remember me, Dad? His father smiled, ruffling his hair. Kid, you just made history. The stars will never forget your name. The boy grinned, gazing out at the endless dark, the kind of dark that didn't feel lonely anymore. Because somewhere out there, an alien princess was staring at the same sky, holding the same toy, thinking the same thing. And for the first time, across galaxies once divided by fear, the universe felt small. Weeks passed, but the story of the human child who gave light refused to fade. It spread like fire across comm relays, whispered in trade routes, carved into stone tablets on distant moons. Every world retold it differently. Some called Eli a chosen one, others a symbol, others just a boy with a heart too big for his size. Whatever the version, one truth remained. He had changed the stars. On Earth, classrooms repeated his story. Soldiers wore his toy starship emblem on their sleeves. Even the politicians, who rarely agreed on anything, used his name when they spoke of peace. But not everyone celebrated. Far beyond the known systems, in the dark edges of Varnian space, there were those who believed the Emperor's bow was a humiliation. Generals who had waited lifetimes for war now sat in silence, their pride burning like coals. Peace with humans, one growled. What's next? Worship them. The council chamber trembled as his voice echoed. We are warriors, not poets. But an older commander, her armor scarred, her tone quiet, replied. A boy showed more courage than all of us combined. Perhaps we are the ones who forgot what strength means. The argument split the empire in two, between those who saw humanity as hope and those who saw them as a threat that could not be ignored. Meanwhile, aboard the Terran flagship Endurance, Captain Merrick read the reports with disbelief. What began as a misunderstanding, he muttered, has turned into a revolution. A comms officer approached. Sir, new transmission from the Varnian High Seat. They're requesting a joint summit. Merrick blinked. A summit? Between us and them? Yes, sir. They want to discuss an alliance of worlds to protect what they call the Light Accord. Merrick exhaled slowly. The Light Accord, he repeated. Named after the kid's toy, no doubt. He couldn't help but smile. On the trade station, Eli had returned to a quiet routine, or tried to. He no longer hid behind his father when strangers stared. Alien traders brought him small gifts, feathers from distant birds, crystals from forgotten worlds. Everywhere he went, people bowed or smiled. But fame didn't sit easily on him. He missed the quiet days. The sound of the hangar, the smell of engine grease, the feeling of being ordinary. One evening, he sat by the viewport again, his repaired toy starship in hand. The stars shimmered like living things. That's when the comm unit crackled to life. Eli of Terra, said a soft, familiar voice. It was her, the Varnian princess. Hey, Eli grinned. You fixed your comm link. She smiled faintly through the hologram. I wanted to say thank you again. My father says the Council of Worlds is meeting soon. They will speak your name. Eli frowned. Why? I didn't do anything big. You did something no one else did, she replied. You saw me. The hologram flickered as her expression grew serious. But be careful, Eli. Not all hearts change as quickly as ours. Some still believe peace is weakness. Eli nodded slowly, remembering the old guards who had looked at him with anger instead of awe. Then we'll just keep showing them, he said. One kindness at a time. She smiled again. That's the human way, isn't it? He shrugged. Yeah, guess so. When the call ended, Eli stared out into the stars again. He didn't notice his father watching from the doorway, proud, worried, silent. Across the galaxy, ships bearing both human and Varnian banners began to patrol together. Enemies who once fired on sight now stood side by side, protecting trade routes and colonies. But somewhere deep in the void, unseen sensors blinked awake. A new fleet, unknown, unmarked, began to move. Its leaders had no interest in peace or honor. They saw the unity forming among humans and Varnians as a danger to their control. In the shadow of a dying sun, their commander spoke. If the humans can change empires with a toy, imagine what they could do with an army. The fleet shifted course. Their destination, the same system where it all began. And far away, unaware of the danger creeping closer, Eli closed his eyes under the silver light of distant stars, dreaming of a galaxy finally learning to care. He didn't know yet that the universe wasn't done testing humanity's heart. The alarms began at dawn. The trade station trembled as the first wave of unknown ships emerged from the void. Black hulls, no insignias, no signals of peace. They came like shadows, swallowing starlight, the kind of fleet that didn't negotiate. Captain Merrick stood on the command bridge, staring at the tactical screen. Not Varnian. Not Terran. Who are they? The comms officer swallowed. They're broadcasting one message. Sir, no translation available. It's just static. Static that sounded like growling. Moments later, plasma fire ripped across space. The first shot wasn't aimed at humans. It was aimed at the Varnian patrol cruiser orbiting near the moon. The blast tore through its shields, scattering debris across the void. The meaning was clear: divide them, then destroy them both. Inside the trade station, chaos erupted. Civilians screamed. Lights flickered. Eli was thrown to the ground as shockwaves shook the decks. His father pulled him close, shouting over the alarms. Stay down, Eli. Don't move. But the boy's eyes were on the viewport. He could see the fleet outside, hundreds of dark ships firing at anything that moved. He saw Terran ships scramble to respond, and Varnian forces rise in defense. It should have been the start of a new war. But something changed. The Varnian Emperor's voice thundered through every comm channel, every frequency, every screen. To all who hear me, stand with the humans. Protect the child of light. That phrase, the child of light, spread like lightning. Within minutes, every Varnian vessel turned its guns toward the attackers, and every human ship followed suit. Two species that once feared each other now moved as one. The battle that followed lit the night side of the moon. Beams of blue and white energy crossed the void. Terran cruisers shielded Varnian frigates. Varnian interceptors covered human troop carriers. For the first time in history, their formations blended perfectly, instinctively. In the chaos, Eli and his father reached the emergency shelter. But the boy stopped halfway down the hall, staring at the window, the stars flashing like fireflies beyond the glass. Dad, he whispered, they're fighting together, because of us. His father grabbed his hand. Because of you. On the flagship Endurance, Captain Marek's voice cut through the battle chatter. All ships, form around the Varnian dreadnought. Give them cover fire. Across the field, the Emperor's command vessel charged its main cannon, not to destroy, but to protect the trade station. The weapon fired once. A pulse of pure light expanded outward, washing over the battlefield like sunrise. The attacking fleet faltered. Their systems failed. Their comms died. And in that frozen moment, humanity struck back, not with hate, but with unity. When the light faded, silence filled the void. The enemy ships drifted, powerless, defeated, broken. Cheers erupted across every channel. No one had won alone. They had won together. Hours later, the damaged fleets gathered near the station. Humans and Varnians worked side by side, patching hulls, carrying wounded, rebuilding what the battle had torn apart. The Emperor himself appeared on the station again, surrounded by guards and healers. But this time, there was no ceremony, only gratitude. He found Eli near the observation deck, his toy starship resting on the railing. The old ruler knelt once more, lowering his massive head. You gave my daughter hope, he said quietly. Now you've given the galaxy peace. Eli looked up shyly. We just helped each other. The Emperor smiled. Exactly. Outside the viewport, hundreds of ships, human and Varnian, began to form a new pattern in the sky. Not a fleet. A symbol. Two stars intertwined, glowing side by side. The new banner of unity, the light accord. Eli's father stood behind him, eyes wet. You did it, kid. You really did. Eli shook his head. No, Dad. We did. The Emperor placed a hand the size of a shield on the boy's shoulder. Let this be remembered. The strongest weapon in the galaxy is kindness. And as the station drifted quietly among the stars, the echoes of that day spread through every world. Old enemies became allies. Borders faded. And in the heart of it all, a small boy from Earth, with a repaired toy starship, reminded an entire universe what it truly meant to be human. Because sometimes, one act of compassion is louder than 1,000 wars. And that was the day the stars themselves whispered, Humanity, F***,